Books Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
We begin Newsmaker Saturday tonight with one of the candidates for governor, and we've extended invitations to every candidate to come on the program and come in studio and do this. And we're trying to make it a very fair look at all the candidates across the board. Matt Salmon, Republican candidate for governor, joins me on Newsmaker Saturday. Great to see you.
John, great to see you.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
I was noticing that since you ran for governor in 2002
right.
to now,
right.
you lost to Janet Napolitano narrowly. There are 2.5 million more people in this state.
That's right.
A lot of people don't know who Matt Salmon is, even though you had two long stints in Congress,
yep.
ran for governor.
Right.
How big of a challenge is this for you to get to reintroduce yourself?
Oh, it's a big challenge, and I've been going all over the state. I think I told you I've given 500 speeches in the last year, and that's not an exaggeration. That's the number of speeches I've given, and I've met with just about every constituency you can imagine across the state. I've been to, you know that old song by Johnny Cash, I've been everywhere, man? Well, I have in Arizona. I've been everywhere.
There you go. I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
When you left Congress the first time, I had a real clear sense that you were beat down and felt like you could not change Washington. What's different about this job?
I still don't think you can change Washington. Having gone back again from 2013 to 2017, I don't think that place is ever going to change. And that's exactly why I decided to run for governor, because I believe that our founding fathers saw this day coming. And that's why they put the 10th Amendment into the Constitution. They believed that the real seat of power in this country was at the state level.
Well, and also that maybe the good ideas for governance come out of the states individually.
By far. And I'd like to do the same kind of thing I did in Congress. You know, I created the Freedom Caucus. I'd like to do the same kind of thing with some governors and take, Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, Greg Abbott, Kevin Stitt, and put together a very conservative, forward-thinking group of governors that's willing to stand up to the federal government and put them on notice that we're not just going to let them push us into a direction we don't want to go.
You're talking about border now?
I'm talking not just about border. I'm talking about, whether it's dealing with COVID, whether it's dealing with, how they want us to implement our schools. A couple weeks ago, the feds said that they were going to come in and take over our worker safety program because OSHA said we weren't doing it right. You know what? When you look at the Constitution, it's really clear that the powers that Congress has or that the federal government has are very limited. 17 enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8. The seat of real power is supposed to be in the states. The states created the federal government, not the other way around.
So on the border,
we need to take it back.
On the border, and you believe in a Republican primary right now, border is issue one.
By far.
No doubt about it.
No doubt about it. And as I've been to the border countless times, and I've seen the mayhem, and I've talked to families that have actually lost kids to fentanyl overdose. And I was in Yuma again last week touring the high schools. Every school has, what's the nose spray, Narcan. Yeah, Narcan. Every one of the schools has that nose spray, and they have saved the lives of a few kids by using it. Fentanyl is the #1 killer of people ages 19 to 35 in this country, and we've got to do everything that we can to stop the cartel's illegal activity at the border.
So this is traditionally thought of as a federal issue.
Right.
Right? So what can a governor actually do?
I think a lot more. And there's those of us that believe that under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution,
I've read this, yes,
where it says that the federal government shall protect the states from invasion. Well, I believe
Can you call this?
I believe what the cartels are doing is tantamount to an invasion. Yes, I do.
But you know that if you went that direction to try to go your own way on the border, if you were governor, there would be legal challenges, particularly from this Biden administration.
Of course.
Which could tie that up for years.
Not necessarily, John. I think I've been really encouraged looking at this Supreme Court and how they've reacted to states' rights issues. And I've been very, very favorably impressed. You know that the Roe versus Wade decision is going to be made, and they're going to refer that back to the states. I believe that's a decision they're going to make, which to me is the proper decision. It is a state's issue, and the states should be setting those policies. So I do believe that when it comes to dealing with whether it's the border, whether it's other 10th Amendment issues, I do believe that the states have to assert their right.
Okay, you've talked about a tent city type style, Joe Arpaio style, and you've gotten blasted for this idea.
Right.
But you believe it's workable.
Oh, I do. I know
would you put in
it's
there?
workable. As I've talked to the border sheriffs and the folks.
Who would you put under there and under what pretense or pretext?
So what we would do, I would call the state legislature in a special session on day one. I would call a state of emergency down at the border. I would send 1,200 armed National Guard to the border, literally as a virtual human wall. And then I would also get the state legislature to pass tougher laws when it comes to criminal trespass. And we would start arresting people that come across our border violating our state laws and incarcerating. And then when we let them out, we're going to escort them back across the border. The cartels, John, are a money-making entity. They charge $5,000 to $10,000 a person to smuggle them across the border. If they feel that Arizona is not an easy place to do business, they're going to take their business elsewhere. They'll go smuggle across New Mexico or California, and then it's not our problem.
But if somebody comes across and says, I'm claiming asylum, I fear for my life in my home country, they make that claim, can you still arrest them?
You know what percentage of people actually end up qualifying for asylum?
I mean, it's very small.
It's less than 5%.
But we've got, this is a years-long process.
I understand that.
And if they're released to the interior.
But that is a federal law. Our law of violating criminal trespass or other laws that are being violated is our right to go ahead and prosecute.
And you'd like to give that a whirl.
And I'd like to give that a whirl.
Okay.
And I believe that if we don't try, there's an old saying from one of my favorite movies, Shenandoah, if we don't try, then we don't do. And if we don't do, then what are we on this earth for? We've got to try, John. Right now, the situation is cataclysmic.
Okay.
And we've got to do everything within our power to stop it from happening.
You mentioned it earlier, the leaked Supreme Court opinion, apparently Roe v. Wade.
Right.
If we believe this is what's going to happen, this is going to end up a state's issue.
Right.
If Matt Salmon is governor, what should that law look like in Arizona? Are there any restrictions?
I believe that we ought to have.
I mean, are there any restrictions?
We should allow it to save the life of the mother. End of story.
Rape and incest?
Look, John, as far as I'm concerned, then you're creating two victims. That is a living human being. And I understand that there are good people out there that have different philosophies and different points of view. But my upbringing is that is a life. And the preamble to the Declaration of Independence says that our whole government is about protecting life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. If I don't stand for something that I believe is life, I think that's being derelict in my duty. And I believe that that's life.
All right, let's move on to, you have said, we cannot allow liberal politicians to turn Arizona into California. I'm hearing that a lot these days.
Yeah.
You know where I'm from.
Yeah.
California.
Yeah. But you know what? You're one of the good guys.
But I know exactly what people are saying when they say that.
Right.
I understand it. Here's my point. You've also said you want to make Arizona a beacon of opportunity. You want to grow the economy.
Right.
How do you do that without bringing in folks from states that you may not think pollute or populate our political environment in a way that you would like to see? In other words, you start going tech and defense, things you want to see grow, you're going to get California. You're going to get New York.
I understand that. I know that a lot of the companies that are in the Silicon Valley right now are exiting in mass exodus because of the policies there, because it's ruined the state. And I've met countless people from California as I've been campaigning over the last year, and they're wonderful people. They don't like what was going on in California, and that's why they left. And the oppressive taxation policies, regulatory policies, why would they want to come here and replicate that? Okay. I think that we've got to do.
So what's the worry then?
So my focus is that we've got to bring in good, high-paying jobs and do everything that we can to try to be a place for advanced manufacturing, for biomedical advancement. I think that we can target certain kinds of industries within the economy, and these are high-paying jobs, and why shouldn't we? I'm the only candidate.
But you can't ask somebody coming in who wants to work in those fields. They can't go through some kind of political litmus test to allow them in.
No, John, of course we can't do that. But you know what? People have been moving from California and Washington State and some of these other
Illinois was
and
the
Illinois
big feeder.
socialist states anyway. And the fact is that we're doing the best we can to try to make sure that they understand we love our way of life. We have more freedom, more opportunity, more growth than any other state. We want to keep it that way.
Do you think that this growth, kind of unbridled growth, is a good thing? There are a lot of people who've lived here a long time who are
unbridled
questioning.
isn't the most sexy of terms. I think that we need to make sure that the kind of growth that is occurring in Arizona is manageable. We all know that we have major water issues that we have to take care of, and so that's part of the equation.
Do you believe in Governor Ducey's plan on desalination?
I think that is a good first step. It's not the solution, John. It's a good first step. But also the desal plant that we're talking about is probably 5 to 10 years away, even if we started construction of it right now. And he's not talking about piping that water to Arizona.
He's talking about
trading it
with
to Mexico for their Colorado River water, and it's about 200,000 acre feet. But we still have to come up with a lot more opportunities for new water.
Let's talk about education for a minute, because it's half of our state budget. You know that. We're spending a lot of money on education in the state. Yet we're third from the bottom in per pupil spending. But then you start drilling down on the test scores. This is interesting. Utah's at the very bottom on per pupil spending. Their test scores are higher.
Right.
Okay?
Considerably.
And Arizona actually isn't that much further behind. We're kind of in the middle of the pack on SAT scores.
Right.
So could anyone make an argument that we're actually getting a pretty good bang for our buck?
Look, I think
how is it that Utah spends the least, but they get a much better outcome?
We can't ever be complacent. But if money was the deciding factor alone in education, the best educated students in the whole country would be in Washington, D.C. And I've been there.
I think you just kind of made my point.
And that is not the case. You've got to have some accountabilities put in place too. You've got to set a really high bar. So it might surprise you to know that actually one of the best performing school districts in Arizona is one of the poorest. It's in Nogales. Take a look at the results. They actually have leaders that set very high expectations all the way down to the teachers, and they don't accept failure as an option. I was,
is this a charter
when
school?
I was working.
This is a charter school?
Yeah, no, it's not a charter school.
It's a public school?
There are charter schools are part of the mix, but when I was at the university here at Arizona State University, we created several charter schools. One of them was a charter school right in the heart of South Phoenix. Every kid qualified for free and reduced lunch. They were all low-income kids. Yet, you know what the graduation rate is? It's 100%. You know what the rate of kids going on to college?
Bottom line, money is not the only answer.
Money is not the only factor.
Do you believe?
But we got to get into the money has to get into the classroom so that we can incentivize teachers, because we do need good teachers.
On taxes, Governor Ducey phasing in a 2.5 flat tax over 3 years. Would you like to eliminate income tax in this state?
I'm the only candidate actually wanting to eliminate income tax
altogether.
Eliminate it. Yes, I do. And I believe that if we do that, John, I'm an unabashed supply sider. Art Laffer was one of my big heroes, the economist for Ronald Reagan. And I believe that if we get rid of our income tax, we will be beating the right kind of business off with a stick. And that business is going to bring great jobs, and they're going to be paying sales taxes and property taxes. John, we're sitting on a $5 billion surplus in the state budget right now, in a $14 billion budget.
Okay, where should
That's
that money,
substantial.
where should that surplus go?
Well, I've already said part of it needs to go to secure the border.
And then?
And then I would look at some other options, maybe, because a lot of that money that we're looking at, out of the $5 billion, I think about 1.5 billion of that is ongoing money. Most of it's one time. So we need to use that money for one-time purposes. Take a look at infrastructure, other things.
We've got 1 minute, Matt. How is Matt Salmon now different from the Matt Salmon who ran? You were in the Arizona legislature, you ran for Congress, you were successful there. You did not win in a run for governor in 2002.
Right.
How have you evolved, and what would you want people to know about how you've
I am somebody that
changed?
loves my state immensely. I've learned so much over the last several years. I love people. I want people to succeed. I think the best form of welfare is actually a job. And I think that our schools have got to produce better results. But, focusing on math, science, reading, writing, and civics, but also How about we get back to the idea of vocational education in a big way in the state? Not every kid's going to go to college. My wife works for EVIT, and I'm so proud of what they're doing there. There are over 42 different certificate programs where a kid can graduate from high school, walk into a $60,000, $70,000 a year job. What's wrong with that? We ought to be able to be an opportunity for all families to be able to take their kids and succeed.
I got one more. And as we're taping earlier in the week, we don't know all the details, but we've had a horrible mass shooting at a school in Texas.
Yes.
Are there any limits on the Second Amendment that make sense to you that could prevent something like
John,
this?
it breaks my heart. And I thought that by doing something like that, would even change in any way, shape, or form the violence. What I'm trying to say, John, is my heart breaks for these people. I think we've got some real mental health issues in this country that we've got to address in a far better way than we are. And a lot of that's been exacerbated over the last couple of years. And, the way the economy's gone, the way the schools have closed down, there's a lot of anger out there. But the answer is not to take away our constitutional rights. It's just not. And it wouldn't solve the problem either, because the problem that is being occurred is happening by evil people. It's not an inanimate object. And you take away guns from law-abiding people, the evil people still will get them. They still will.
Matt Salmon, good to see you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Good luck.
Thank you.
We're on warp speed right now getting toward this election.
We
Thank
sure
you
are.
for
Thanks
coming
a
on
lot.
the program. And again, we've extended an invitation to all the candidates here. Welcome here anytime. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Thank you. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, every year we are told, it seems in the last 10 years, it's going to be a horrific fire season. Sometimes you wonder if it's kind of starting to fall on deaf ears, whether people are paying attention, because we get warned about this every year. However, we are in maybe the midst of a 20 or 30-year drought in the Southwest. So things are not good. It is dry. And really, we are in the time period right now, May through roughly 4th of July, that's generally, historically, the worst time for fires in Arizona. Joining us is Tiffany Davila, Public Affairs Officer, Department of Forestry and Fire Management. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've had, I was looking on the incident web today. We've got 3 major fires we've had. We've had the Tunnel Fire, the Crooks Fire, the San Rafael Fire. But just Thursday, for instance, 11 new incidents in Arizona. A lot of them are small. They're less than an acre. They're knocked down quickly. But stuff is going up out there, and people have to be careful.
It is. And had we have these fires in the next week or two, they could be coming out of that initial attack phase and growing even larger. So that's why it's so important we stress to people wildfire prevention throughout the year. We're also in fire restrictions right now. And, we're always doing this for the safety of the public and our firefighters. That's our number one priority. We want to make sure everybody has a safe holiday weekend and beyond, and that they're recreating safely. Under stage 2 fire restrictions, there's no campfires, there's no smoking outdoors, and for state land purposes, there's no target shooting or fireworks. You hit the nail on the head in your intro. We are very dry. We've got drought conditions across the state, little to no precipitation in our forecast, and we really need everybody to do their part to help us prevent wildfires.
So, Tiffany, the forecast technically is that most of the Southwest will have an above normal potential for fires in May and June. It's not dire, but it's not great. We got a little bit of a reprieve because we had a really wet monsoon. The thing that's interesting is we're not seeing the big forest fires yet. It seems that when we get a lot of precip from the monsoon, you get a lot of vegetation, and you get more kind of urban interface fires, more toward the outskirts of the urban areas. Am I right?
You are very right. Last year we had a heavy monsoon season, and really all that did was create an abundance of grass load across the state, especially in the southern region and throughout the Sonoran Desert. We didn't have any winter precipitation. So now all of that heavy grass load is just basically a tinderbox waiting to burn. So again, we have to stress the importance with everybody, especially if you live in the wildland urban interface. Our jurisdiction not only is state trust land, but private private property as well. We get a lot of our starts on private property, whether that's somebody grinding, welding, having a burn that maybe gets out of control. And that's when you start to see that spread from the private property, either onto state trust land or federal lands also.
Yeah, there's a study I wanted to kind of bounce off you. It really is, it's pretty scary stuff. It talks about the chances of people ending up being in fire danger. This came out this week, and it was pretty scary stuff. It said that over the next 40 years or so, people are going to be in fire danger at an increasing rate, and a lot of that has to do with people are moving into and around the forests.
Yes, and I haven't seen that study, but what I can tell you based off what we're seeing here in Arizona is as the valley grows, as our population continues to increase, we are seeing that population spread into the wildland urban interface. The western edge of Phoenix, the eastern edge of Phoenix, when we're talking about, Pinal County area, we're starting to see a lot of development in those areas. Once you get those new home builds in those areas, now you have more people interfacing with the wildland. Thus, you could have an increase in wildfires. And, we say it all the time, we don't have a quote unquote fire season anymore. We can have a fire spark at any time of the year here in Arizona. And unfortunately, right now, this is the time that we are going to see that high fire activity. This is our peak of our season.
Yeah, it was the First Street Foundation study. It said that Arizona has roughly 100,000 properties with a 1% annual risk of burning down. Most of them in Coconino, Gila, and Navajo counties. But they said that each year, that small risk over time, over 30 years, it compounds. So between now and 2052, many homes in forested areas of northern Arizona, for instance, face a 26% risk of burning down. That is pretty sobering.
It is pretty sobering. And, that's why we're also urging the public to do their part. Create that defensible space around your property. Provide that buffer between your home and a potential wildfire. It's as simple as basic yard maintenance, keeping that water or that lawn watered and mowed.
Yeah, look at that picture on your screen. I hope you can see it.
Exactly.
They had defensible space. This may have been the fire in California. I'm not sure. This is a Crooks fire. Okay.
Yeah, and even with that defensible space, not only does that help potentially protect your property, but it allows firefighters to get in there safer and access your property to help protect it even more. So it's one of those dual roles. You're doing your part. We're getting in there because you did your part to help protect your property even further.
Okay, a couple of things. There's another report. This was a study done in 2020, the Waters and Fuller study, that said that air tankers and initial attack early to knock down a fire was really helpful. They've discovered this in California. These big, these DC-10s can drop a lot of retardant, a lot of slurry, and they can kind of smother a fire before it really gets ripping and spreads. Are we seeing that initial attack is now the new model?
We've always been seeing initial attack as that model. What we're doing this year in Southern Arizona is we're pretty much throwing everything we can at our fires. All of the tools we have, all of the resources we have available, we're throwing everything at those fires to stop them from spreading even further into communities and doing even more damage. We're using heavy aircrafts, our very large air tankers. We have Type 1 helicopters, Type 2 helicopters, all of our ground resources. Now, kind of just a myth, and we want people to understand, because sometimes we get comments like, well, we don't see any aircraft flying. Sometimes aircraft is not the right tool for the job. We always have aircraft on standby should we need it. And using aircraft and having retardant basically slows the spread of the fire. It doesn't necessarily put the fire out. It just slows that forward progress, the spread of the fire, so that we can get our hand crews in there to start working and building that containment line.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. Tiffany Davila, the Public Affairs Officer, Department of Forestry and Fire Management. Well, let's just keep our fingers crossed, and then people need to really take some ownership and be careful out there, because right now, as dry as it is, a single ignition source can cause a big, big problem.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you
Tiffany,
for having me. I appreciate it.
thank you. Good to see you. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your weekend. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. We appreciate you spending part of your Saturday watching Newsmaker Saturday. And if you want to see a prior show, here's the place to do it. You can capture it on the QR code or fox10phoenix.com/newsmaker. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.